The morning sun painted the purple grasslands of New Cheyenne in golden light. Kang Dosu walked slowly across his ranch, his weathered boots crunching on the dry earth. At 73 years old, every step hurt his tired bones. His hands shook as he carried the feeding bucket to the grazing beasts. The creatures were called moonhorns by the colonists. They looked like earth cattle but had silver fur and curved horns that glowed faintly in the dark. Dosu had raised 3 generations of these animals on his land. They knew his voice and came running when he called. "Come on, you big babies," Dosu said softly, pouring grain into the feeding troughs. "Time for breakfast." The moonhorns gathered around him, making gentle humming sounds. Dosu smiled and patted their thick necks. These animals had been his family for 40 years. His wife, Yun Mirai, had loved them too before the fever took her 10 years ago. His daughter Nari had helped him feed them every morning until she left for the war. Dosu tried not to think about Nari. She died 5 years ago fighting the hegemony forces on the Outer Rim. The colonial Marines said she died a hero. That did not make the pain go away. Now Dosu was alone on 10,000 hectares of the best ranch land on New Cheyenne. His homestead sat in a valley between 2 mountain ranges. Crystal streams ran through his property. The soil was rich and dark. Underground, rare minerals waited to be dug up. That was the problem. Dosu walked back to his house after feeding the animals. The building was simple but strong, made from native stone and hardwood. Mirai had planted flowers around the porch. Dosu still watered them every day, even though his hands shook more each week. Inside the house, the medical scanner beeped softly on the kitchen table. Dosu had avoided looking at it for 3 days. He knew the news would be bad. The headaches were getting worse. Sometimes he forgot where he put things. Yesterday he called a moonhorn by his daughter's name. Dosu sat down at the table and activated the scanner. The blue light washed over him for 30 seconds. Then words appeared on the small screen. Neural decay syndrome. Advanced stage. Estimated time remaining 4 to 6 months. Dosu stared at the words for a long time. He was not surprised. His father had died of the same disease at age 75. It ran in families that had lived too long on frontier worlds. Something about the radiation from alien suns. A loud rumbling sound made him look up. A hover truck was approaching his house, kicking up dust clouds. Dosu recognized the black vehicle with corporate markings. The Takeshi Corporation came to visit him 3 times a week now. The truck landed near his porch with a soft thud. A man in an expensive suit climbed out. His name was Watanabe, and he worked for the mining division. He had been bothering Dosu for 6 months. "Good morning, Mr. Kang," Watanabe said with a fake smile. "How are you feeling today?" "Like a man who wants to be left alone," Dosu replied. Watanabe laughed, but his eyes stayed cold. "You know why I'm here. The company's offer still stands. 12 million credits for your entire property. That's enough money to live comfortably in the city for your remaining years." Dosu knew what Watanabe really meant. The corporation had ways of finding out about medical scans. They knew he was dying. They were waiting like vultures. "My answer is still no," Dosu said. "Be reasonable," Watanabe pressed. "What will happen to this place when you're gone? The colonial government will claim it as abandoned property. You'll get nothing and your family legacy dies with you." Dosu felt anger rising in his chest. "My family legacy is this land. Every rock and tree, every stream and hill. Nari played in these fields when she was small. Mirai's ashes are scattered in the flower garden. Sentiment doesn't pay bills," Watanabe said. "Look around you, old man. You can barely take care of yourself. The fences need repair. The equipment is breaking down. You're one accident away from disaster." It was true, and Dosu hated that. His body was failing him. Tasks that used to be easy now took all day. He had hired ranch hands before, but they all left for jobs closer to the cities. Young people did not want to live on the frontier anymore. "Besides," Watanabe continued, "think about the greater good. The trilithium deposits under your north pasture could power a dozen worlds. The company will extract it safely and efficiently." Dosu snorted. "Safely, like you did on Kepler 7? I heard about that mess. You poisoned 3 rivers and killed half the wildlife." Watanabe's smile faded. "That was an unfortunate accident. Our safety protocols have improved significantly since then. Get off my land," Dosu said quietly. "Think about it, Mr. Kang. Really think about it. You don't have much time left to make decisions." Watanabe walked back to his truck. Before getting in, he turned around one more time. The company is patient, but not infinitely so. There are other ways to acquire property if negotiations fail. The hover truck lifted off and flew toward the city. Dosu watched it disappear over the mountains. He understood the threat. Takeshi Corporation had ways of making problems disappear. Ranch accidents happened all the time on frontier worlds. That evening, Dosu sat on his porch and watched the twin suns set. The sky turned deep purple and the first stars appeared. In the distance, he could see lights moving through the grasslands. They moved too smoothly to be human vehicles. The lights belonged to the Crimson Feather people. They had lived on New Cheyenne long before human colonists arrived. Most humans thought they were primitive savages. Dosu knew better. For 40 years, he had maintained an uneasy peace with the local clan. Their leader was Bai Jiho, a wise warrior who spoke perfect standard language. Sometimes Jiho's people would trade exotic furs for medical supplies or metal tools. They never caused trouble for Dosu's ranch, but Dosu had heard stories from other ranchers. The Crimson Feather people could move like ghosts across the landscape. They knew every rock and stream for hundreds of kilometers. Corporate security forces feared them more than they admitted. As Dosu prepared for bed, an idea began forming in his mind. It was crazy and dangerous. It might not work at all, but it was better than letting Watanabe and his corporate masters steal everything his family had built. He would need to contact Jiho. That meant riding out to the sacred stones where the clan sometimes camped. It would take most of a day to get there, and his body might not handle the journey. But Dosu had 4 to 6 months to live. He could spend that time fighting, or he could spend it giving up. He chose to fight. The next morning, Dosu saddled his old riding beast and packed supplies for the journey. His hands still shook, but his mind was clear. He had work to do before he died. The Takeshi Corporation thought they were dealing with a helpless old man. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The journey to the sacred stones took Dosu 8 hours through rough terrain. His riding beast, an old mare named Suki, picked her way carefully across rocky streams and steep hills. Every bump sent pain through Dosu's tired body, but he pushed forward. The sacred stones were 7 tall pillars of black rock that stood in a perfect circle. Local legends said they had been there for thousands of years, long before humans came to New Cheyenne. The Crimson Feather people considered them holy ground. Dosu had only visited this place twice before. The first time was 40 years ago when he first claimed his land. Jiho's father had met him there to discuss boundaries and water rights. The second time was when Nari was born. Jiho had brought a blessing gift for the new baby. As Suki climbed the final hill, Dosu saw smoke rising from the stone circle. The clan was there, just as he had hoped. 3 dome-shaped shelters sat between the pillars. Several Crimson Feather people moved around the small camp. Dosu stopped Suki at the edge of the circle and waited. It would be rude to enter without permission. The Crimson Feather people had strict rules about sacred places. A young woman emerged from the largest shelter. She was tall and lean like all her people, with reddish-brown skin and a crest of bright red feathers running down the back of her head. She wore traditional leather clothes decorated with small bones and metal pieces. A modern energy rifle hung across her back next to a curved bone knife. Dosu recognized her. This was Lisua, Jiho's daughter. She had grown up while Dosu was raising Nari. Both girls had played together sometimes when their fathers met for trade talks. Kang Dosu, Sua said in careful standard language. You come to sacred place, why? I need to speak with your father, Dosu replied. It is important. Sua studied him with sharp dark eyes. The Crimson Feather people could read faces like humans read books. She probably knew he was sick just by looking at him. Father hunts in the deep valleys, she said. He returns when the small sun touches the horizon. New Cheyenne had 2 suns. The big one was yellow like Earth's sun. The small one was white and very bright. When both suns were visible, the light turned everything strange colors. I will wait, Dosu said. Sua nodded and disappeared back into the shelter. Dosu climbed down from Suki and found a flat rock to sit on. His legs felt weak and his head hurt. The neural decay was getting worse every day. An hour later, more Crimson Feather people arrived at the camp. They moved so quietly that Dosu did not hear them coming. One moment he was alone. The next moment, a dozen warriors surrounded the sacred stones. They were impressive fighters. Each one carried both traditional weapons and modern firearms. Their leader was a young man about Nari's age. He had the same red feather crest as Sua, but his was longer and more elaborate. Battle scars crossed his arms and chest. "This is Minho," Sua told Dosu, war leader of the eastern clans. "My brother in spirit, if not in blood." Minho stared at Dosu with suspicion. Why does the old human come to our sacred place? Does he bring gifts? Does he bring threats? Neither, Dosu said honestly. I bring a problem that affects us both. Before Minho could respond, another figure appeared at the camp's edge. Beijiho walked between the stone pillars with the silent grace of a predator. At 50 years old, he was still strong and dangerous. Tribal scars decorated his face and arms. His feather crest was silver with age. "Dosu, my old friend," Jiho said in perfect standard language. "You look tired. Sit, rest. We will talk." Jiho's people quickly prepared a place for their guest. They brought water and travel food. The Crimson Feather people were always hospitable. Even to humans they did not trust. "Your daughter has grown strong," Dosu said, watching Sua check weapons with the other warriors. "She leads scouts for 3 clans now," Jiho replied with pride. "Fast like the wind, smart like her mother. But you did not come here to discuss my children?" Dosu took a deep breath. "The Takeshi Corporation wants my land. They visit me 3 times each week with offers and threats." Jiho's expression darkened. "We know about Takeshi. They poison streams to the north. They dig great holes in the sacred mountains. Their machines kill the singing stones." The singing stones were a mystery to human scientists. They were crystal formations that made musical sounds when the wind blew through them. The Crimson Feather people believed their ancestors' spirits lived in the stones. "They want the trilithium under my north pasture," Dosu continued. "If I sell to them, they will strip mine everything. The streams that flow through my land also flow through your territory." Sua looked up from her weapon maintenance. "The silver streams? But those are sacred waters. Our young ones receive their adult names beside those streams." "Corporations do not care about sacred places," Minho said bitterly. "They care only about profit." Jiho nodded slowly. "This is true. We have fought Takeshi before. Their security forces burned our village on the eastern plains. They said we were terrorists for protecting the singing stones." Dosu felt sick hearing this. He had not known about the village burning. The colonial news services never reported fights with native people. "There is something else," Dosu said quietly. "I am dying. Neural decay syndrome, 4 to 6 months." The Crimson Feather people exchanged looks. They understood death. They also understood what it meant for Dosu's land. "When you die, who claims your territory?" Jiho asked. "The corporation thinks they can take it," Dosu replied. "But I have another idea. A crazy idea that might not work." Jiho leaned forward. "Tell me." Dosu explained his plan. As he talked, the Crimson Feather warriors listened with growing interest. Even Minho stopped scowling. "The old treaties," Jiho said thoughtfully. "Yes, I remember. My grandmother was there when Governor Kim signed the papers. She said the humans promised we would always have rights to buy land if we had proper payment. Most humans have forgotten those treaties," Sua added. "The corporations act like we do not exist. But the law is the law," Dosu said. "Even corporations must follow colonial legal codes." Minho laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "You think pieces of paper will stop Takeshi? They have armies. They have warships in orbit. They also have shareholders and board meetings," Dosu replied. "Bad publicity costs them money. Legal battles cost them time. If we do this right, we can make them regret ever coming to New Cheyenne." Jiho stood and walked to the edge of the stone circle. He stared out at the grasslands where both their peoples had built their lives. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky in purple and gold. "This plan requires trust between our peoples," Jiho said finally. "Many of my warriors hate all humans because of what the corporations have done. Many humans fear your people because of old stories and prejudices," Dosu admitted. "But we have been good neighbors for 40 years. Our children played together. We have shared water and helped each other during hard times." Jiho turned back to face the group. "If we do this thing, there will be no going back. Takeshi will come with guns and soldiers. People will die." "People are already dying," Sua said quietly. "The poison streams kill our elders. The strip mines destroy our hunting grounds. At least this way we fight back." Minho nodded agreement. "I am tired of running from human greed. Let us make a stand." Jiho looked at each of his people, reading their faces. Finally, he looked at Dosu. "Old friend, you offered to give us your land for almost nothing. Why should we trust this gift?" Dosu smiled sadly. Because I have no children left to give it to. Because your people will protect it better than any corporation. And because sometimes the right thing to do is also the smart thing to do. The war chief was quiet for a long moment. Then he extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. We will try your crazy plan, Kang Dosu. May the ancestors guide us all. As they shook hands, Dosu felt hope for the first time in months. He was still dying, but his land would live on. 3 weeks passed after Dosu's meeting at the sacred stones. His health grew worse each day. Sometimes he forgot where he put his tools. Other times he called his moonhorns by the wrong names. The neural decay was eating away at his mind like rust on metal. But his plan was ready. Jiho had spent those 3 weeks digging through old tribal records. The Crimson Feather people kept detailed histories going back hundreds of years. They remembered every treaty, every broken promise, and every legal document the human colonists had made them sign. Park Miran, the clan's eldest keeper of memories, had found exactly what they needed. She was 80 years old with white hair and hands like tree bark. Her mind was still sharp as a blade. The Treaty of Seven Stones, Moran said, holding up an ancient document, signed by Governor Kim Taeho in 2341. It says Crimson Feather people are a sovereign nation with full property rights under colonial law. Dosu studied the yellowed paper. The official seals were still clear. The signatures looked real. Most importantly, the legal language was binding. The corporations forgot about this, Jiho said with satisfaction. They think we are just primitive natives with no rights. That mistake will cost them, Suwa added. She had spent the weeks practicing her standard language and studying human law books. This treaty is registered with the colonial legal database. It cannot be ignored. The plan was simple but dangerous. Dosu would invite Watanabe to his ranch for a final negotiation. When the corporate man arrived, Dosu would sell his entire homestead to the Crimson Feather clan for 1 colonial credit. The sale would be completely legal under the old treaty. Watanabe would be furious, but he could not stop it. Corporate lawyers would tie up the courts for years trying to break the deal. By then, Dosu would be dead and the land would belong to Jiho's people forever. On a cold morning when both suns were hidden by clouds, Dosu made his call. Mr. Watanabe, this is Kang Dosu. I want to discuss your offer. The corporate man's voice became excited on the communicator. Excellent decision, Mr. Kang. I can be there in 2 hours with all the paperwork. Come alone, Dosu said. This is a private matter. After ending the call, Dosu prepared his ranch house for the meeting. He moved his medical scanner to the bedroom where it would not be seen. He cleaned the kitchen table until it shined. Then he placed a single colonial credit in the center of the table. The coin was old and scratched. Dosu had carried it for 40 years as a good luck charm. Today it would buy him justice. Jiho arrived first with Suwa and Moran. They hid in the back rooms of the house where Watanabe would not see them immediately. Suwa carried a portable recorder to document everything that happened. Are you ready for this, old friend? Jiho asked. Dosu nodded, though his hands were shaking worse than usual. I have been ready since the day they first threatened me. The sound of hover engines announced Watanabe's arrival. His black corporate truck landed near the porch with its usual cloud of dust. The man climbed out carrying a briefcase full of contracts and legal documents. Watanabe knocked on the front door with barely controlled excitement. He thought he had finally won. Come in, Dosu called. The corporate man entered the kitchen and immediately noticed the coin on the table. His smile faded to confusion. What is this? Watanabe asked. Please sit down, Dosu said calmly. We have business to discuss. Watanabe sat across from Dosu at the kitchen table. He opened his briefcase and pulled out thick stacks of papers. I have all the sale documents prepared, he said. Just sign here and the money will be transferred to your account within hours. I am not selling to you, Dosu said quietly. Watanabe's face turned red. What? But you called me. You said you wanted to discuss the offer. I said I wanted to discuss your offer. I never said I would accept it. Before Watanabe could respond, Jiho stepped out of the back room. Soa and Miran followed close behind. The corporate man's eyes went wide with shock. What is this? Watanabe demanded. What are these natives doing here? They are here to buy my ranch, Dosu said. He picked up the colonial credit from the table and slid it toward Jiho. I hereby transfer ownership of this entire homestead and all its resources to the Crimson Feather clan for The sum of 1 colonial credit. Jiho picked up the coin solemnly. On behalf of my people, I accept this offer and agree to all terms. Watanabe jumped to his feet so fast his chair fell over. This is insane. You cannot sell to them. They are not even citizens. Moran stepped forward with the ancient treaty in her hands. Treaty of 7 Stones, Section 12, Paragraph 4, she said in perfect standard language. The Crimson Feather Nation is recognized as a sovereign people with full rights to own property under colonial law. She placed the document on the table in front of Watanabe. His face went white as he read the legal text. This is impossible, he whispered. This treaty is 50 years old. Age does not make laws invalid, Sua said. This treaty is registered in the colonial legal database. It has never been revoked or superseded. Watanabe grabbed his communicator and called his corporate headquarters. Dosu could hear angry voices shouting through the device. Sir, we have a problem, Watanabe said into the communicator. The old man just sold his property to the natives using some ancient treaty. More shouting came from the device. Watanabe's face grew redder with each passing minute. No, sir, I do not think we can break it legally, he said. The treaty appears to be legitimate. When the call ended, Watanabe looked at Dosu with pure hatred. You think you are very clever, old man. But the Takeshi Corporation does not give up easily. We have other ways of solving problems. Are you threatening violence against a sovereign nation? Jiho asked calmly. I am not threatening anything. Watanabe replied. I am simply stating facts. Accidents happen on frontier worlds all the time. Sua held up her recorder. Everything you just said has been documented and will be transmitted to colonial authorities within the hour. Watanabe realized his mistake. Corporate executives could make veiled threats, but middle managers could not afford to be caught on recording making illegal statements. This is not over, he said, gathering his papers. The corporation has lawyers. We will tie this up in courts for decades. You are welcome to try, Miran said with a smile that showed too many teeth. But while your lawyers argue, we will be living on our land and extracting our resources. After Watanabe stormed out and flew away in his hover truck, the 4 allies sat around the kitchen table. The colonial credit sat in the center like a tiny metal monument to their victory. It is done, Dosu said. The land belongs to your people now. The land belongs to all of us who care for it, Jiho corrected. You will live here as long as you wish. This is your home. Dosu felt tears in his eyes. For the first time in months, he was not afraid of dying. His family's legacy would continue through these good people who understood the true value of the land. Outside, storm clouds were gathering over the mountains. But inside the ranch house, 4 friends shared tea and planned for the future. The hardest part was still to come, but they had taken the first step. The Takeshi Corporation thought they were dealing with ignorant natives and a helpless old man. Tomorrow they would learn the truth about underestimating their opponents. War was coming to New Cheyenne, but this time the defenders were ready. The sun had not yet risen when Watanabe returned to Dosu's ranch. This time he brought 20 armed security guards and 3 hover trucks. The corporate man was angry and desperate. His bosses at Takeshi Corporation had given him a simple order: get that land by any means necessary. Watanabe expected to find an old man alone with his animals. Instead, he found something that made his blood turn cold. 70 Crimson Feather warriors stood scattered across the property like living statues. They had appeared during the night without making a sound. Some crouched in the tall grass, nearly invisible except for the glint of their weapons. Others perched in the twisted trees that dotted the landscape. A few stood boldly on the hilltops where everyone could see them. Each warrior carried both traditional weapons and modern firearms. Their red feather crests caught the early morning light like flames. They did not move or speak. They simply watched and waited. Leading them was Ominho, the young war leader Dosu had met at the Sacred Stones. He stood near the ranch house with his arms crossed. Traditional bone armor covered his chest, but a modern energy rifle hung across his back. His face showed no emotion. Watanabe's security team stopped their vehicles at the edge of the property. The guards were professional fighters, but they had never faced anything like this. Native warriors seemed to be everywhere, appearing from rocks and shadows like ghosts made flesh. How many do you count? The security captain asked through his radio. I see at least 50, came the reply. Maybe more. They are hard to spot in this terrain. Watanabe climbed out of his truck and walked toward the ranch house. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to keep moving. 20 guards suddenly seemed like a very small number. Minho stepped forward to meet him halfway. The young war leader moved with the fluid grace of a predator. Every step was controlled and purposeful. "You are trespassing on sovereign Crimson Feather territory," Minho announced. His voice carried across the valley despite being barely above a whisper. "Withdraw immediately." "This is human colonial land," Watanabe replied, trying to sound confident. "You people have no legal right to be here." Minho reached into a leather pouch and pulled out an official document. It was a copy of the property transfer, stamped and signed by both parties. "This land was legally purchased yesterday for 1 colonial credit," Minho said. "The sale is recorded in the colonial database. We are the rightful owners." Watanabe's face turned purple with rage. "This is a joke. You cannot buy 10,000 hectares for 1 credit." "The seller set the price," Minho replied calmly. The buyer accepted the terms. Colonial law recognizes all voluntary property transfers between legal parties. Behind Minho, more warriors began to emerge from their hiding places. They moved with coordinated precision, like dancers performing a deadly ballet. Within minutes, the corporate security team found themselves surrounded and outnumbered. "Sir," the security captain said over the radio, "we need to leave. Now." But Watanabe was beyond reason. Months of pressure from his corporate bosses had driven him to desperation. His career would be over if he returned empty-handed. "Listen to me, you savage," he snarled at Minho. "The Takeshi Corporation has orbital weapons platforms. We have battlecruisers in the outer system. Push us too far and we will turn this entire valley into glass." Suwa appeared beside Minho, as if she had materialized from thin air. She carried a portable recording device that was already running. "Please repeat your threat about orbital bombardment," she said politely. "I want to make sure the colonial authorities hear it clearly." Watanabe realized his mistake too late. Threatening to use military weapons against civilians was a serious crime under colonial law. Corporate executives might get away with such things, but middle managers like him could face prison time. "I was not making threats," he said quickly. "I was simply explaining corporate capabilities." "It sounded like a threat to me," Minho said. 70 witnesses heard you promise to turn our land into glass." More Crimson Feather warriors moved into view. They came from every direction, flowing across the landscape like water. Each one was armed and ready for battle. Their movements were so coordinated they seemed to share a single mind. Watanabe's security guards were brave men, but they were not stupid. Fighting 70 native warriors on their home ground would be suicide. The smart thing to do was retreat and call for reinforcements. "Sir, we really need to go," the security captain said over the radio. "My men are getting nervous." Dosu appeared on his ranch house porch. The old man looked tired and sick, but his eyes were bright with satisfaction. He had spent 40 years building relationships with his Crimson Feather neighbors. How those relationships were paying off. "Good morning, Mr. Watanabe," Dosu called out. "I see you have met the new owners of this property." "This is not over, old man," Watanabe shouted back. "The corporation will not stand for this humiliation." "The corporation is welcome to file a legal challenge," Minho said. "But until the courts rule otherwise, this is Crimson Feather land. You are trespassing." Jiho stepped out of the ranch house beside Dosu. The war chief wore full ceremonial armor made from native materials and modern alloys. His presence seemed to fill the entire valley. "My son speaks truth," Jiho said in his deep voice. "This land belongs to my people now. We will defend it with our lives." The message was clear. Any attempt to take the land by force would result in a bloody battle. The Crimson Feather warriors were outnumbered by corporate security forces across the planet, but they knew this terrain better than anyone. Fighting them here would be like fighting the land itself. Watanabe looked around at the warriors surrounding his small force. Each native fighter was positioned for maximum tactical advantage. They controlled the high ground, the water sources, and all the escape routes. It was a masterpiece of military positioning. How did they get into position so quickly? Watanabe wondered aloud. "We never left," Minho answered. "Some of us have been watching your people for weeks. We know every move you make before you make it." The truth was sobering. Corporate intelligence had completely failed to detect the native surveillance network. These warriors had been preparing for this confrontation, while Watanabe was still making polite offers in the ranch house kitchen. "Fall back to the vehicles," the security captain ordered his men. "Slow and steady. No sudden movements. As the corporate forces began their retreat, Suwa called out to Watanabe. "Tell your bosses that this land is protected by treaty law," she said. "Any attempt to violate our sovereignty will be met with appropriate force." Watanabe climbed into his hover truck without responding. His hands shook as he activated the engines. This was supposed to be a simple land grab, but it had turned into a nightmare. As the corporate vehicles lifted off and flew toward the distant city, the Crimson Feather warriors maintained their positions. They would stay on the land as long as necessary to protect their new home. Dosu walked down from his porch to stand beside Jiho and Minho. The three men watched the hover trucks disappear over the mountains. "They will be back," Dosu said quietly. "Yes," Jiho agreed, "but next time they will bring more soldiers. This was just a test of our strength." Minho smiled grimly. "Let them come. We will be ready." The first battle was won, but the war for New Cheyenne was just beginning. In corporate boardrooms across human space, executives were already planning their response. They would not let a handful of natives stand between them and billions of credits in mineral wealth. But the Crimson Feather people had survived for thousands of years by adapting to new threats. They would not be broken by corporate greed or human arrogance. The land would be defended. News of the Dollar Ranch incident spread across human space faster than anyone expected. Within hours of Watanabe's retreat, video recordings appeared on colonial news networks. Suwa had transmitted everything to media contacts in the capital city. The story captured people's imagination. An old dying rancher had outsmarted a powerful corporation using forgotten legal documents and native allies. It was the kind of tale that made ordinary colonists cheer and corporate executives rage. On Earth, the story became a symbol of resistance against corporate power. Students at universities held rallies supporting the Crimson Feather people. Workers in the outer colonies shared the videos during their break times. Even some corporate employees quietly celebrated Dosu's cleverness. But the real impact was felt on New Cheyenne itself. In the capital city of New Austin, Governor Park Soon-ho received angry calls from Takeshi Corporation executives. They demanded military intervention to restore corporate property rights. The governor was a careful politician who understood which way the wind was blowing. "The property transfer appears to be legal," Governor Park told the corporate representatives during a heated meeting. "My legal advisors have reviewed the Treaty of Seven Stones. It is binding colonial law." The corporate executives were not satisfied. They had invested billions of credits in New Cheyenne development projects. One successful native land claim could encourage others. "Governor, you must understand the broader implications," said Takeshi's regional director, a cold woman named Yamamoto. "If we allow this precedent, every native clan will start asserting ancient treaty rights." She was more correct than she realized. Across the planet, other Crimson Feather clans had been watching the Dollar Ranch situation closely. News of Jiho's success reached tribal councils in the deep forests and mountain valleys. Elders who had hidden old documents for decades suddenly brought them into the light. The Blue Sky clan lived near the northern mineral fields. Their leader, Kim Junho, was Jiho's cousin and shared his tactical intelligence. When Kim heard about the ranch victory, he immediately called his own council meeting. "If one clan can reclaim land through old treaties, perhaps we all can," Kim told his warriors. The Blue Sky people had their own ancient agreements with the colonial government. Documents signed in 2343 gave them rights to traditional hunting grounds that now held valuable mineral deposits. Corporate mining operations had been poisoning their water sources for years. Within a week, Kim's clan filed legal claims to 12,000 hectares of corporate mining territory. Their lawyers were the same ones helping Jiho's people. The cases were iron-tight under colonial law. Similar actions began across New Cheyenne. The Ironclaw clan claimed fishing rights to polluted rivers. The Stormwing people asserted control over sacred mountains being strip-mined for rare earth elements. The Shadowwalker clan laid claim to an entire valley where corporations had built weapons testing facilities. Each claim was backed by authentic historical documents that corporate lawyers had ignored for decades. The native peoples had better legal research than anyone expected. They had been preparing for this moment longer than the corporations realized. Suwa became the public face of the growing native rights movement. Her intelligence and media skills made her perfect for dealing with colonial officials and news reporters. She could speak the language of law and politics while never forgetting her people's traditional values. "We are not trying to drive humans off our world," Sua explained during a broadcast interview. "We want to share the land responsibly. Corporate strip mining destroys everything for short-term profit. Our methods work with natural systems for long-term prosperity." The interview was seen by millions across human space. Sua appeared calm, intelligent, and reasonable. She wore traditional crimson feather clothing but spoke in perfect standard language. Her message resonated with colonists tired of corporate environmental destruction. But the corporations fought back hard. Takeshi hired the best lawyers in human space to challenge the native land claims. They argued that the old treaties were no longer valid because the original signatories were dead. They claimed that native peoples lacked the technical knowledge to develop mineral resources properly. The legal battles were expensive and time-consuming. Corporate executives hoped to bankrupt the native clans through endless court procedures. But they underestimated their opponents' determination and resources. The Crimson Feather people had something more valuable than money. They had justice on their side and the support of ordinary colonists who respected their environmental stewardship. Mysterious accidents began happening to native leaders. Kim Junho's hover car developed engine problems during a mountain journey. Only his mechanical skills saved him from crashing into a deep canyon. An elder from the Iron Claw clan found explosive devices near her home. Sua received death threats through anonymous communication channels. The message was clear: back down or face consequences. But the intimidation campaign had an unexpected result. It made the native peoples more determined than ever to fight corporate control. Young warriors who had been uncertain about confronting human authorities now saw the true nature of their enemies. "They try to frighten us because legal methods are failing," Minho told a gathering of war leaders from 6 different clans. "Fear is the weapon of those who cannot win through honest means." The warrior council met in secret caves deep in the Whispering Mountains. Representatives from dozens of clans attended the unprecedented gathering. For the first time in generations, the scattered Crimson Feather peoples were uniting against a common threat. Old rivalries were set aside as clan leaders shared intelligence about corporate activities. They coordinated their legal strategies and planned defensive measures for their territories. What had started as Dosu's desperate plan was becoming a planet-wide resistance movement. Meanwhile, at the Dollar Ranch, Dosu's health continued to decline. The neural decay was entering its final stages. He spent most days sitting on his porch, watching Jiho's people work the land with methods that honored rather than destroyed the natural environment. The Crimson Feather farmers used sustainable techniques that actually improved soil quality while extracting valuable minerals. Their yields were smaller than corporate strip mining operations, but their methods could continue for centuries without damaging the ecosystem. "Your people are remarkable," Dosu told Jiho during one of their evening conversations. "You have found ways to take what you need without destroying what sustains you." "It is the old way," Jiho replied. "Take only what the land can give. Leave enough for your children's children." Corporate executives could not understand this philosophy. They thought in terms of quarterly profits and shareholder returns. The idea of sustainable development over centuries was foreign to their thinking. This fundamental difference in values made compromise impossible. The corporations wanted maximum extraction in minimum time. The native peoples wanted careful stewardship over generations. One approach would destroy New Cheyenne's environment within decades. The other would preserve it for thousands of years. As both suns set over the purple grasslands, Dosu realized his simple plan had started something much larger than he intended. The Dollar Ranch had become the first spark in a fire that was spreading across the entire planet. Corporate boardrooms on distant worlds were holding emergency meetings about the New Cheyenne situation. Military contractors were being quietly contacted about providing security services. Stock prices were falling as investors worried about the stability of colonial mining operations. The little ranch in the valley had become the center of a struggle that would determine the future of an entire world. And somewhere in the corporate towers of Earth, executives were planning their final solution to the native problem. War was coming to New Cheyenne, and this time it would be total. 3 months after the Dollar Ranch transfer, Dosu could barely leave his bed. The neural decay had reached its final stage. His hands shook constantly and sometimes he forgot where he was. But his mind still worked well enough to understand what was happening around his home. The ranch had become the unofficial capital of the growing Crimson Feather resistance. Warriors from dozens of clans had gathered in the valley. They built temporary shelters using traditional methods that left no permanent scars on the land. From his bedroom window, Dosu could see Jiho's people working with the soil and streams. They had discovered new ways to extract trilithium without destroying the environment. Their methods were slower than corporate strip mining, but they produced purer minerals and left the land healthy. The yields are actually higher than corporate projections, Sua explained during one of her daily visits to check on Dosu. Their machines waste resources because they work too fast. Our careful methods recover more valuable materials. This news had reached corporate headquarters on Earth. Takeshi executives were furious that primitive natives could outperform their expensive mining equipment. Stock prices continued falling as investors questioned the company's technical competence. But Dosu knew the corporations would not give up easily. They had too much money invested in New Cheyenne to accept defeat. Something big was coming. The answer arrived on a cold morning when 7 suns were hidden by storm clouds. Long-range sensors detected a massive fleet approaching the planet. 50 military transport ships carried thousands of mercenary soldiers. Behind them came corporate security vessels armed with orbital bombardment weapons. They mean to end this once and for all, Minho told the Emergency War Council. Our scouts count at least 5,000 enemy troops. The odds were impossible. All the Crimson Feather clans together could field maybe 1,000 warriors. They had better knowledge of the terrain, but the enemy had superior weapons and air support. We cannot win a direct battle, admitted Kim Junho, the Blue Sky clan leader. Their orbital weapons can destroy us from space. But Jiho had been planning for this moment since the Dollar Ranch transfer. We do not need to win a direct battle. We need to make victory too expensive for them to afford. The strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. The Crimson Feather forces would not fight as one large army. Instead, they would split into small groups and use guerrilla tactics across the entire planet. Every corporate facility would face constant attacks. Every supply convoy would be ambushed. Every communication station would be sabotaged. The mercenaries were professional soldiers, but they were not prepared for fighting an entire planet's population. Their employers had told them this would be a simple police action against a few troublemakers. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated resistance movement. The first corporate landing ships touched down near the capital city of New Austin. Governor Park had reluctantly agreed to allow the military intervention after intense pressure from Earth, but he limited their operations to specific areas and banned the use of orbital weapons. The mercenary commander was a scarred veteran named Colonel Hayes. He had fought colonial rebellions on a dozen worlds, but New Cheyenne was different from anything he had experienced before. "Sir, the natives seem to know our every move before we make it," reported his intelligence officer. "They attack our supply lines and disappear before we can respond. Our air patrols cannot find their main forces." The truth was that the Crimson Feather people had spent weeks preparing for this invasion. They had moved their families and elders to hidden caves in the mountains. Only warriors remained in the valleys, and they moved like ghosts through terrain they knew better than their own heartbeats. Sua coordinated the resistance from a mobile command center that changed location every few hours. She used both traditional signal fires and modern communication equipment to stay in contact with clan leaders across the planet. "The enemy is strong but blind," she told her commanders. "They see only what we want them to see." The turning point came when the mercenaries tried to capture the Dollar Ranch. Colonel Hayes believed that taking Dosu's homestead would break native morale. He sent his best troops in a surprise dawn assault. Instead of 50 warriors, they found 700. Clans from across New Cheyenne had secretly gathered in the valley during the night. They used ancient tunnel systems that corporate surveys had never detected. By sunrise, every hill and stream was defended by determined fighters who considered this land sacred. The battle lasted 6 hours. Corporate hover tanks advanced into carefully prepared kill zones. Mercenary infantry found themselves caught between crossfires from invisible opponents. Air support was grounded by surface-to-air missiles that appeared from camouflage positions. When the dust settled, half the corporate assault force was destroyed or captured. The survivors retreated in disorder, leaving behind expensive equipment that the natives quickly salvaged. During the fighting, Dosu passed away peacefully in his bed. Jiho was with him at the end, holding the old rancher's shaking hand. "The land will remember you, old friend," Jiho whispered. "Your sacrifice gave us the strength to fight." News of Dosu's death spread quickly through both armies. The corporate mercenaries saw it as an opportunity. With their primary opponent gone, surely the natives would lose heart and surrender. They were completely wrong. Dosu's death transformed him into a symbol of resistance that inspired fighters across human space. Colonial militias on other worlds began asserting their own rights against corporate control. Worker strikes shut down mining operations on 6 different planets. Even some corporate employees refused orders to support the New Cheyenne invasion. The economic pressure became unbearable. Takeshi Corporation's stock price collapsed as investors fled. Board members called for the resignation of executives who had started the disastrous military adventure. Within 2 weeks, corporate lawyers were requesting peace negotiations. The talks were held at the Dollar Ranch, in the same kitchen where Dosu had made his one credit deal. Governor Park served as mediator while Sua represented the United Crimson Feather clans. "The native land claims are legal and binding," the governor declared. "Corporate mining operations on disputed territory must cease immediately." The final agreement gave the Crimson Feather people control over 60% of New Cheyenne's surface. They would develop mineral resources using their sustainable methods and share profits with the colonial government. Corporate operations would continue in designated areas under strict environmental regulations. Sua signed the treaty using a pen made from native materials and human technology. It was a fitting symbol of cooperation between 2 very different peoples. 5 years later, New Cheyenne had become a model for sustainable development. The Crimson Feather extraction methods were being studied and copied on worlds across human space. Environmental scientists came from Earth to learn how traditional knowledge could improve modern technology. The Dollar Ranch was preserved as a historical site. Visitors came to see the kitchen table where an old rancher had changed the fate of an entire world. A simple marker outside the house carried Dosu's final words. "The land remembers its true children." Sua often stood by that marker during quiet moments. She had become a respected leader who helped guide her people into a new age of cooperation with humanity. But she never forgot the dying cowboy who had trusted her father with everything he owned. One colonial credit, she would tell visitors with a smile. That was all it took to buy justice. As the twin suns set over the purple grasslands, children of both species played together in the fields where warriors had once fought. The moonhorns grazed peacefully under alien stars, and somewhere in the evening wind, old-timers claimed they could still hear Dosu's laughter echoing across the valley he had loved enough to fight for. The land endured, the people endured, and the legacy of the Dollar Ranch would inspire generations yet to come.